in this series, we've tried to conceptualize and also discuss, post-COVID scenarios, because this is an unprecedented situation for all of us. And of course, world, the pandemic has impacted every aspect of our lives. And you know what the scholars have been telling us? I've read a few books on pandemics in the past. One of them is by a man called Frank M. Snowden, who is a professor of medical history at Yale. But what these books tell us is that pandemics have affected human history and human society even more than wars. And unfortunately, our memories are so short that we forget,
Yeah.
the Black Plague, the White Plague, and the smallpox epidemics, and so on and so forth. And we just return to life as normal as soon as perhaps a vaccine comes out, or whatever ways that we invent to combat this terrible epidemic. Now, one of the things that the research shows is that the most vulnerable sections are also the most affected by the pandemic. So, when it comes to India, obviously, our migrant laborers have been terribly impacted, and also women who are a very vulnerable section, as you know more than I do. You've been the chairman of the National Commission for Women. I'll come to an introduction in a moment, but I mean, vulnerable sections are going to be the most impacted, because we know that during the pandemic, domestic abuse, tensions, and also the difficulties that our women face. For example, in Haryana, I was reading, and in Punjab, that as soon as the liquor vends were opened up and the relaxations were brought in after lockdown phase 2, the women began to complain that the men don't go and work, but whatever money there is in the house, they'll go to the liquor fountain. So, what we're saying is that what is the status and position of women during the pandemic, and what can we do about it afterwards? And of course, I would request you also, it's customary for us every year to flag certain issues, trying to maintain good practices in our office. We have an internal complaints committee also, and we are committed to an environment in the institute where all our women employees feel safe, they feel secure, they feel protected, but more than that, they also, luckily, we haven't had many instances of this kind of harassment on the workplace, in the workplace. But the point is, they also feel free to talk about issues that concern them, and we have a mechanism in place. So I've invited Dr. Meenu Agrawal, our resident medical officer, once I finish and introduce you, to sort of conduct the proceedings, partly because, I might face pockets where the wireless may go off. I'm connecting with my phone. So I apologize in advance for that. And also that our paid subscription somehow hasn't kicked in of WebEx. So every 50 minutes we'll get cut off, but
Yeah, I know. I
there's
was
no
told that.
restriction. There's no restriction to how long you can speak, Lalitha ji. It's
No, that's
completely
it.
your floor. So after the first 50 minutes, we'll just log on immediately. So I mean, it can be a nice 2-minute break for whatever nature calls or whatever we need to do. But I just wanted to say a couple of words about you. You
He's getting.
many distinguished positions. You've even stood for elections. And now, of course, you are a director in India Foundation, one of the most influential foundations in India. And I've had the privilege of speaking in the same panel with you. On many occasions, you've chaired the panel that I've spoken in. But I think our readers, I mean, our listeners rather than readers, don't really know one of the most interesting things that I found about you, which is in your blood courses, the political cross currents of India. I can't think of any single party where one member or the other of your very, very distinguished family hasn't played a huge role, from the communists on the left Now you're a member of the BJP, but Justice Party, the Congress Party, and all kinds of parties in between. Some member or the other of your family, starting with your distinguished grandfather, have been very important to the entire political spectrum of India. So we are very proud and happy to welcome you to our webinar series. So over to you, Lalitha ji. And after this, if in case I have to switch off my video, I'll still be here. I'll still be listening to you, and the IMO will take over from here. Meenuji, do you want to say a couple of words before I request Lalita ji to address us? Do you want to say a few words, Dr. Agarwal?
Okay, sir. Good afternoon. I will just
Good
give a
afternoon.
brief introduction to Madam Lalitha Kumar Mangala. So, if you permit me, so I can read out a few
Sure, of
brief
course.
introduction. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome Ms. Lalitha Kumar Mangalam to this webinar series of challenges and opportunities in India post-COVID-19 world. So just a brief introduction. Madam Lalitha Kumar Mangalam was chairperson, National Commission for Women from 2014 to 2017. She has extensive experience in working towards the empowerment and advancement of women from vulnerable and underprivileged sections of society. She has worked on a range of issues such as healthcare and HIV/AIDS prevention, sex workers and the LGBT community, migrant and construction workers, and self-help groups and urban slum women. Ms. Kumar Mangalam has a master's degree in business administration from Madras University and graduated with honors in economics from St. Stephen College, Delhi. So with these words, I invite Madam Kumar Mangalam to start the.
Yeah, thank you very much to both of you, Makarand and you. Let me plunge straight into the topic that I was asked to speak on. Now, we all know that COVID has upset lives generally for everybody, men, women, children across the board. We all know that millions of people have had to go home. The migrant labor, amongst them, many of them are women and children. We also know that even though the government has opened up, many governments, including state governments and the central government, there are still major barriers that we have to cross with regard to COVID infection. Indians do not have a good record when it comes to civic sensibilities or the way we behave in public, and too many of us are not following precautions. The rising tide of COVID infections does not reassure anybody, either internationally or people who understand that epidemics can leave very deep scars on societies, both economically, culturally, and of course politically. We also have a lot of, this country has a lot of other problems at the moment, and I don't think it's just restricted to India. But let me speak about what has happened to Indian women and children, the majority of them, during the last 7 to 8 months, say since the lockdown, because that's when the real effects of the epidemic started to be felt. Now, there are many anecdotal evidences that violence against women, especially domestic violence against women, has increased. However, the unfortunate fact also is that reporting of violence has actually gone down. If you take the statistics of the Home Ministry, you will see that reported domestic violence in the last quarter of 2019-20, which includes March, really, basically, and the first quarter and the next 2 months, say the first 6 months of 2020-21, there has been a reported decrease in domestic violence cases. However, this is, I mean, people don't understand that statistics don't always, in many circumstances, don't always show the reality of what is happening. The major reason for the drop in the reported violence is because women, you're sitting at home with the person who is the perpetrator of that violence, the man who's actually beating you up, or whoever else is abusing you in other ways. You're also, many women don't have the physical space. You have to take your phone to go and make a call or to complain about it. And you can't actually, if you live in a small house, people can hear what you're talking on the phone. You can't be whispering. 3, if you manage to somehow, after lockdown is over, a partial lockdown is over, manage to get yourself 10 minutes and go to a police station, the police are too busy with patrolling whatever they have to do to prevent COVID. They're out on the street seeing people, whether people are wearing masks or not. In many parts of the country, police are their hands are tied because of the floods, because of various other natural calamities that have hit the country almost simultaneously. The third thing also is that domestic violence itself is not considered such a big issue in this country even today. When you go to even in Tamil Nadu, which is the state where I come from, it is considered one of the better managed, better administered, in many ways industrially much more forward, better educated people, etc., etc. state. Even there, if you go, and I'll say it in Hindi because I know the language, they will tell you, "अरे ये तो घरेलू मामला है, घर में जाके करो ना, अभी कोविड चल रहा है, हमारा और कोई काम नहीं है क्या?" This is a very, very common refrain I've heard from women. And a woman or even a child, any human being who has been abused physically, mentally, physical abuse almost always leads to a mental trauma in the person who has been abused. When they go to a police station and they think, okay, finally, maybe I'll get some help, and the reaction is this, then it totally sends them off, their balance. It just pushes them off balance, and they close in and they just say, okay, theek hai, jo hona hai hoga, and they go back home. Also, the abusers and the women during lockdown, you can't get out of the house. Don't forget that. So where do you go and complain? There is no all India number where, there is for rapes, but for domestic violence, there isn't. Now, let me quote an example that France had done. They had come out with a number where women could call local pharmacies. It was like a code number, say 789, okay, or DV123, something like that. I don't know what the exact number is, but they would call a pharmacy, and the pharmacy could then inform a local police station. Now, while many of me and my friends who are also activists said that this would be a good idea, the problem in India is that most of the people who man our pharmacies are not really either well educated or well trained enough or even well oriented enough to understand that domestic violence can actually upset families very badly during a lockdown. In a lockdown, you're stuck at home. While many people have connected with families, we've heard very good stories and all of that. In a family where a woman is being abused, it is not a happy situation. Women also tend to protect their children, all women across the world. And when a man is frustrated, a man's income has dropped, or let's not say that always the abuser may not be a man, it could be an older woman, it could be a younger woman abusing an older woman. The abuser generally has more power, and they are frustrated at this moment because there's a drop in income. You're stuck together for 24 hours in everybody's tempers tend to get upset more easily, and women who are abused and feel that their children at risk will always protect their child first. So children are also getting very badly affected, and you know what happens to mothers when their children are at risk. The average mother, Indian or anywhere else in the world, will always put their child first, and often that gets them into more physical trouble and makes them the victims of greater violence than when they can say, get out of the house, go to a neighbor's house, or just, said, push the husband out of the house. Whatever. There are very limited options for women who are the victims of domestic violence during a lockdown. Now, the other thing is that in public, in the past, many women who are abused have had access to safe spaces where they can go to sit and talk to other women who were abused, to talk to counselors, to meet doctors, to negotiate or to get strengthened in order to be able to deal with such a situation. Even these are not available during a lockdown. So the fact is that not only is she a victim of violence, she's stuck in a place from where she cannot escape that violence even if she wants to. Now look at the other side. Let us look at another aspect of how violence is very difficult to deal with, especially has been very difficult for women to deal with during the pandemic. Many women who are sitting at home have lost their jobs. Women who had a degree of economic independence, women who, even if they did not have economic independence, at least that chapa is there that I contribute to the house. Now even that has gone. Here, statistics have shown that 73% of women who have lost, 73% of people who have lost jobs, especially in the unorganized sector, are women. Now, let us also remember that most women work in the unorganized sector. Women like me or Dr. Meenu or many of you fellows who may be on listening to me now, we are the rarity. We are less than 5% of the total population of India's women. We don't have, we have the liberty of falling back perhaps on savings, of having our own self-respect, of being able to negotiate a safer, less violent life for ourselves. But the majority of women do not have this option. Now, during the pandemic, I'm sure that eventually the figures that will come out about even sexual abuse will be much more than we presume. Now that the economy has started opening up, Makaranji mentioned one point that many women have been saying, and this was a complaint again that came in from Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, the southern states and Bihar a lot. The moment alcohol shops were opened, we could see even in Delhi, people will go and stand in line for hours just to buy booze. And everybody knows that alcohol exacerbates many feelings, right? It pushes you to lose your temper fast. It makes you more violent. It makes you get more angry. There are lots of reasons for it. And one of the excuses, and I'm using this word deliberately, excuses. Some people may feel that I'm being prejudiced against men. But one of the excuses being given is that the frustrations of sitting at home have made men lose their tempers and take it out on their wives. Now, I'd like to point out two things here in defense of other women, that everybody is sitting at home, men, women, children. It does not give only men the right to lose their tempers and take it out on their family, especially their wives and their children. Wives or other women in the family and their children. This is not right. This is what I say when I say that civic sense in India can be very, very poor. Now, when we've opened up, and we also see that when women get infected, the entire household gets affected. All right, if a woman is positive in an average household, let's take it, where a woman does her own cooking and does a large part of her own housework during this time because our maids were not turning up, the whole house gets badly affected. And the sense of guilt that is put on the woman that, look, who asked you to get infected? It's not a choice women make, any woman makes to get sick. Many women I've heard have been covering up that they're not keeping too well, which is actually medically very wrong. But I don't know whether one can actually blame an individual woman because I don't know her circumstances, her family circumstances. I don't know whether she's caught in a trap of, not having enough money to be able to go for treatment, or doesn't want to be targeted, to be stigmatized. You know how judgmental we Indians can be. Somebody says, I need to go to a psychiatrist. Acha, wo to pagal hai. A woman says कि मुझे COVID मिल गया, immediately, क्यों? कहाँ गए थे? Where did you go? Why did you go? Whom did you go with? Etc. 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 So the stigma that is associated with COVID also has put many women in jeopardy of increased physical violence. Now let me move to another topic where women also have been adversely affected during the epidemic. Health-seeking behavior and nutrition. There is a baby boom which has already started to be reported post the COVID lockdown. Now, this has happened, I think, if you look at, if there are historical figures available, you will find every lockdown because families are forced into men and women are generally forced into closer contact with each other. There has always been a baby boom. Now, many women don't even understand they're pregnant till, it's too late. And the fact is that in India, traditionally, reproductive health services are not that well available. I'm not talking about abortion. I'm talking about the prevention. I mean, prevent a woman being able to prevent herself from getting pregnant. Most of our family health centers should be able to offer them contraception, but women don't have that. That behavior is very poor with women throughout India, especially the women in the lower economic communities, where more children per family are actually born. Now, when money is in a shortage, actually, traditionally, if you see in many houses, even very rich households, it's the women who eat last. They serve food, they make sure everybody else eats, then they eat. Now, when you're in a well-off family, you should be able to get enough food to be able to nutritious food. It's not the quantity. I'm talking about the nutritious aspect of the food that you may get. But in poor families, you get just the remnants. And this also compromises women's health, making them more susceptible to any infection. Immunity is always adversely affected by food that is not nutritious enough. Women themselves from birth are taught that you eat last, that you cannot complain about the fact that your food is not nutritious enough. And this is something, hello, can you all hear me? Hello? All right, I presume that you all can hear me. So
yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Even I can hear you in the car, so I'm sure others can.
Okay,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Good. Yeah, thank you. So when women themselves feel that there's nothing wrong in us being fed last, there's nothing wrong if we eat the remnants of what is left, then it's very difficult to change that situation. And it's a generational problem that occurs again across the world, but in India especially, when a woman's health is compromised during a pregnancy, the child's health is also compromised, both in utero, that is, when she is pregnant, and after the child is born, because especially now that breastfeeding has been made so important. It is, even I have sometimes commented that I'm surprised to see how poor women get pregnant and actually manage to produce their babies much more than women who are educated and who live in cities. A friend of mine pointed out it could be the cleaner air and the cleaner vegetables and the less polluted places that they live in. Whatever the reason for it, the fact is that when a child's nutrition is compromised in that first 6 to 9 months, and we are now saying that 6 months breastfeeding, only breastfeeding, doctors say don't even give water. And if the mother's health is compromised, the child's health is compromised. And a child's brain gets its maximum growth in that first 10 months, and then from the 10th to the 24th month. In the first 2 years of the life, about 90% of your brains, I mean, the amount that it should really grow, already grow. It should have done it. If it doesn't, in a sense, you are in many ways, you're not mentally compromised, but perhaps more often than not, a child's mental, the growth of its brain can be adversely affected. Most often is. Perhaps not measured scientifically too much, but the fact remains that it's very important. Now, the fact also is that schools have been closed for over 6 months. I have a granddaughter of 7 years, and I know how irritating it is when the child is sitting at home. It's not the child's fault. Children are demanding. They want to go out to play. They want to talk to their friends. They want to be able to use the net to do whatever they want to do. And mothers are the ones who normally carry the burden of the household. Running the household is normally a woman's job. In India, this is, I mean, whatever we may say, however empowered a woman may be, I have friends who are, extraordinarily successful entrepreneurs, but still running the household is her responsibility. She may have the money and the education and the training to be able to multitask and all of that, but it is her responsibility. And during the epidemic, most women have unfortunately had this added responsibility of having children sitting at home, especially young children. Children up to the age of 12 standard, I think even colleges are not open, right? And young children need all children need attention, but at least when they're a little older, it's about just providing food. But younger children need a lot of physical care too. So the physical burden on women has also increased. And we can't complain about it. There are many empathetic places, like I said, safe places we could go to. But 90% of other women will also be critical of a woman if she turns around and says, "Arey baap re, my children are at home, it is such a burden." it is very difficult for women to come out and express themselves in a way where they are not judged in a very critical manner. So they keep quiet, and that builds up a lot more mental and physical tension. The amount of tension that women have gone through in COVID, I don't think women have even started talking about it. Today, I spoke to a very old friend of mine who's actually the head of the Guild of Service. The titular head she isn't, but executively she runs the place, and that's a huge NGO. And she was telling me about women across the board in India who are now coming and saying that please get us, get us somebody whom we can just talk to, we can unburden ourselves to. Now that shows the amount of stress they're under. They're not even able to talk about it. How many of us do you think, can actually go and tell a sister or somebody else, a sister-in-law, or anybody, a neighbor, that this is happening to me? The old Indian sense of ghar ke bahar nahi jana chahiye, that is, we don't talk about our troubles outside our four walls, is also hemming us in. Now the fact also is that when women fall ill, they are the last ones to be taken for treatment generally, and this is exacerbated during the epidemic, because if anybody is ill in a family, again most of the care burden falls on the woman. If it's a wife or a daughter-in-law or an elder daughter or whatever, it's the women who normally do most of the caregiving. Health insurance for women is very poor in India, very, very poor. When I had treatment for cancer, I was, at that time, that was the last few months of my tenure at the NCW. So I was covered by government insurance. But post that, the moment I went, and because I tend to tell everybody very frankly that, I went and told my insurer that I have had treatment for breast cancer and this is this. You should have seen the reaction from them. They said, wait, and this is a very big insurer. They said, madam, let us see. You see, you are almost a senior citizen. I said, no, almost is not the point. Under the law, either you are or you aren't. So you look at your alternatives and get back to me and tell me what I am to do. It was extraordinarily difficult. Imagine when you're sitting in the chair of the chairperson of the National Commission for Women, if you have to negotiate your own health insurance, what the ordinary woman is actually going through. Now, coming from all of this, let me come now back to what Makaranji also talked about, post-COVID. What do we need to do for women? First, we need to, and every government, regardless of state, whether it's a panchayat level, whether it's the district, whether it's at the state level or the central level, you need to get women on board to tell you what were the problems they faced, how these problems, in case of another epidemic, again, like Makaranji said, there have been many epidemics, but we never seem to learn from them. We just, once everything we think is back to normal, we just go back to behaving normally. I mean, take it, look at it now. How many people in public are actually wearing a mask the proper way around? The mask is down here. What's the point of wearing a mask? How many people are continuing to wash their hands or have sanitizer with them? Look at the television serials that have come back on, whether in Hindi or the other regional languages. You will find that nobody's wearing a mask. When they go out, it's like naam ke vaste, as we say, just a name. So, in such a case, you need to actually talk to women to ask them what do they need in both a lockdown or a similar situation, or when life is limping back to normal. Sorry.